Hello everyone, I'm Sahil and welcome back to the channel. So today's Friday, 20th of August as I'm recording this video, and it's just the end of another bloody week for Chinese stocks. Like now it has just become a norm, right? Every other day, 3 to 5% dive is nothing, right? And just today, the tech healthcare stocks, JD Health, Ali Health, Ping An Good Doctor, they all dropped by 14 to 18% just on one news, and everything is down, which is just amazing, right? And all the rest of the stocks, they are down about, like, you can find a number of stocks down 50% from their peak just this year. That is massive. Like, and the economy is doing just fine in China. Like, the companies are doing fine as well in terms of business. The businesses have been growing 20-30% on year-over-year basis in the recent earnings. So everything is fine, yet the stock market is down. It used to be the other way around, right? In US market, like, the economy has crashed, but the stock market is at all-time highs. Whereas, like, it's opposite in the Chinese market. So amongst all this, right, one of my viewers actually forwarded me this quarterly letter from one of the funds, and it is very good, and I completely agree with all these points, and I've shared the same points in multiple videos that I've made. However, this dude over here, he actually puts it in way better words than I can ever do. Hence, I wanted to share it with everybody on the channel. So we're gonna do just that. And if you guys have not noticed, this is gonna be a very chill video. So grab yourself a drink and let's hit it up. Alright guys, before we start, now you already know I have a Discord channel, so if you guys want to join, it's linked in the description below. If not, let's get right into it. And right here is the not shareholder letter, but the quarterly letter by Hayden Capital, which is written by Fred Liu, and one of my viewers actually forwarded this to me. So Fred Liu, well, I will just link the guy's I think Twitter profile in the description below if you want to check him out. And I think he's a pretty big investor in C Limited, which is a Southeast Asian company, right? And if you guys are invested into C Limited, then you should go and check him out. He has quite a number of things and content on that particular stock. So yeah, but moving into it, he's actually talking about CCP over here. So let's go right into it, right? And according to him, the Firesale liquidation that we are seeing in the market right now is actually stemming out of the confusion that people have due to the lack of background knowledge about the country and the government. So yeah, which he believes is necessary to actually even begin understanding where all these developments are coming from. So yeah, and according to him, he tries to understand why and how someone thinks, and where they're coming from, and the experiences and the things that have actually shaped their worldview. So these are the points that Fred Liu is actually sharing in this article as well, and let's go and check them out. So firstly, he says that it's not about stealing your money, the Western investors' money. And this is something that I can understand as well. Like, there have been Chinese companies, what they do is that they will list in a foreign exchange, raise some money. I will give you a particular example over here. I can't recall the name, but well, there was this company who actually went public on a US exchange at $12 a share. And then after a few years, right, the CEO and the company itself actually cut all communication with shareholders. So there's no conference call, nothing. And they do their bare minimum just to stay listed on the exchange. So all the regulatory filings that they have to do with SEC. Yeah. So they just do the bare minimum just to stay listed. And other than that, there's no communication with the shareholders. So the shareholders definitely got very worried about the company, right? And they start to sell off. And the company actually dropped from the IPO price of $12 down to less than $1. And once it was at there, right, the CEO actually just took the company private. He offered more than what the company was selling for. He offered $1 for the share. And then once the company was taken private, he took the company and he listed it on another exchange in mainland China, and it was obviously trading at a high valuation again, right, because the financials were so good. But basically it took away the money from the Western investors, right? So yeah, And I understand where the opinion is coming from. However, according to Fred, right, this is actually about CCP fixing China's own internal problems, and capital as a whole is just a collateral damage from this. And it's not just Western investors. And he points out that CSI 300, which is an index of 300 largest Chinese companies listed in Shanghai and Shenzhen, dropped over 10%, 20% since February peak, just when the education sector regulation news broke on the night of July 22nd. So obviously the Shanghai and Shenzhen Stock Exchange, the main investors are Chinese investors. Foreign investors, I think he has mentioned, make less than 5% of this exchange. Less than 5% of the domestic Chinese market. And not just that, even Hong Kong exchange, right? We all know that one. They actually dropped 20 to 80%. 80% is mostly those educational tech stocks that are listed there as well. And he mentions that mainland investors, institutions and retail, right, in total make about 60% of the trading volume of Hong Kong exchange. So then again, it's not just the foreign investors that are getting affected. It's also the Chinese investors from the news. However, Chinese government, CCP, doesn't really care about it, right? And that is what the Fred Liu is actually trying to establish in this article as well. So moving on, where he says that, right, in China, you must always keep in mind that capital is simply one of the many inputs used to achieve the country's societal goal. And in fact, Econ 101 will teach you that GDP growth is a function of labor, capital, and technology / productivity. So he's trying to say that Chinese government is more focused on labor and technology instead of capital. So labor is basically the population, the citizens, right? And the whole goal of a society is to just improve the lives of its people, right, as a whole. So labor is definitely their priority. Technology is, in his word, is just used to amplify this output. Obviously, technology makes lives of people better. Like looking at a very basic thing, and I was reading about it, sanitary system, right? Before it was like people would come to your door and they will carry your shit with them to throw somewhere, which is so disgusting, right? Now you have just one button to flush it out and it's gone, which again, it's a very basic technology, but it's still technology, right? And it is improving your life. So it's definitely necessary. Whereas capital, right? Capital, according to him, is faceless. And we all know capital is just a tool, right? It's never an end goal of a society. So why focus on that so much? And that's exactly CCP is doing as well. According to him, it just belongs to people, most of the people who have actually benefited from the country's rise and have accumulated the capital in the process, and thus have a national duty to help and repay their fellow citizen and country who have helped them to achieve the success. So this is where China differs from the Western society, right? We all know, and I think it's very well established, that China focuses on the community as a whole rather than the benefit of the community as a whole rather than that of an individual. Whereas in the Western society, it's more like the rights of an individual is way more important than the community as a whole. So better good of everybody, right? If I'm putting it in the right words, I think it's along that line. You guys understand, right? So yeah, and he also gives us a few facts, like in 1980s, right, when China was opening up, Deng Xiaoping famously said, "Let others get rich first." And the idea was to allow certain these businessmen, right, to accumulate their wealth first, and then that would be used to actually benefit the rest of the society, the backward parts of the country. And they were actually helped by the government, like all the policies and stuff was helping them to accumulate this wealth. However, it wasn't meant to allow some to get rich and then they use their newfound wealth and power to then go squeeze even more profit out of those that are left behind. That is what is happening in the Western countries as well, right? Low wages and stuff, and you just squeeze out of people to give to the shareholders, and the rich get richer. And that is exactly what CCP is doing. Seeing many companies also doing today. So yeah, that's where all the regulations are coming from, I guess. And he says that capital is meant as a tool, and this is something I think everybody would agree with, right? We also hear it in a lot of philosophical talks that money is just a tool. You can use it to buy a lot of other things, but it is never an end goal. And like he says also, it's a fuel to enhance and accelerate societal goal, not as an end goal itself. And if the well-being of the capital must be sacrificed to ensure a better long-term direction for the society, then in Chinese government's eyes, it is a worthy trade-off, especially when the capital being impaired is fueling the wrong societal goals in the first place, such as high educational costs, high housing prices, discouraging financial formation, family formation, keeping delivery drivers' wages low so it can squeeze more profit for the shareholders' pockets, right? And this is exactly what we see happening everywhere. Obviously, if you just go and implement, or you have to raise wages of your employees, right? That is freaking stupid, because the companies will just go on and pass this cost to the customers, right? And in the end, it's just going to increase the inflation. Everything is going to get expensive, and the raise of the wages for the employees is not going to make a difference, because everything they want to buy will get expensive as well, right? So that is what I think, where I used to hate socialism. But if Chinese government is able to make sure that the capital being raised off is coming from the profits of the company rather than the pockets of the customers, then I think it makes sense. And in the long term, it's actually beneficial. Why? Because we have all this people, right, who are living paycheck to paycheck in a way. They don't have much savings, or they're not buying high-end stuff, right? If they are able to uplift themselves and come to a level like upper middle class, where they are able to save money and they can also take advantage of the market, then as the income grows, you definitely have more spending power out there, right? And that's gonna just bring the economy as a whole up. Imagine having one billionaire, how much he's gonna spend, even though he rolls out money he's a baller. Yet again, how much is he gonna spend more than 1,000 millionaires? No, right? So yeah, that's, I think, obviously, like one of my viewers even mentioned, they are definitely gonna piss off a few billionaires, but they're gonna make a lot more millionaires in the process, which is eventually beneficial for the entire society and for us as an investor as well, if you want to see it this way. But it's definitely a long-term view rather than a short-term one. However, just moving on to what he says, I go off topic every now and then. So what are these problems and issues that Chinese government is trying to actually fix by impairing all this capital market, right? There are a few things, and I think every one of us can agree on a couple of points. But let's just go through what Fred has to say, because he also puts it in a good word, so we can cover everything over here. So what he's trying to say is, right, China was growing rapidly in 2000 to 2010. It was actually, there was a 14% year-over-year growth in GDP in 2007, whereas now it has dropped, so 6%. And when China was growing rapidly, the overall pie was increasing, and everybody was enjoying the benefit out of it, even though some were having a better one, like someone was taking a larger piece of the pie, but then everybody as a whole were growing and everybody was happy. But now, as the pie is shrinking with the slowing growth, right, then you have trouble, because we have some people who have immense large fortune during the rapid growth phase, and then now they have an unfair advantage or power to actually get a bigger pie of the bigger piece of the pie, and they're not going to stop, right? It's not like if they have a millions of dollars, then they're going to stop increasing their wealth. It's not going to be like that, right? So now that they have more capital and power, then obviously they can go on and get even more using that capital. Like, giving an example, if I am someone who's earning way more than I can spend, right, then I have some savings. This savings I can go and invest into capital market, and that will grow my wealth as a whole. But if there's someone, right, who's just living paycheck to paycheck, he has nothing to invest, then right, where he's just gonna stay at the same area, right? He's not gonna get the benefit of the pie increasing. It's just the rich getting richer. That is the word, right? And obviously that is happening in China as well. So income inequality has in fact widened, and IMF indicates that China not only has one of the worst levels of income inequality among emerging markets, but it's also one of the highest rate of worsening over the past 30 years. And this is exactly, I think, what all the, not just emerging market, but basically the developed market faces as well. And you see a lot of protests in US against this as well. The rich are getting richer. The income inequality is getting wider and wider. And this is what CCP wants to stop. Why? I mean, does it matter to them? It's because of the various other things, like getting into the specific issues as well, right? And the regulation itself. And first thing he talks about is education, which he says is highly prized in China. And that is true. Like in Asian culture, right, the entire goal of a person is just to get good education and get a good job, and you are done. You're nothing more than that. You are successful already if you get a good job. So that is the whole point of all this weird thing as well happening in all the not Western, but Eastern countries. India, you have China, South Korea, Japan, Vietnam. Everybody is doing that. And, you know, he even goes forward to say that if there's a single gifted child in a family, everybody in the family, even extended family, will go and pitch in for the education cost of the child, in order to, like, you know, if he gets well off in his life, then he will also support the rest of the family. So that is the kind of thing that people are actually looking into. And the author again gives us some numbers over here. So on average, Chinese parents spend 18,000 USD per year on after school tutoring. 18,000 USD, right? And their GDP per capita is only 10,000 USD. So it is obvious that the bulk of families' resources are going towards kids' education, with additional support from the extended family and savings. So there it is. And all this financial pressure on the families and the mental pressure on the students is intense. He says that, you know, 60% of elementary school students are enrolled into after school tutoring. And not just that, right? I've also heard, like, it's common for 2-year-old kids in China to actually get tutoring, not just for academic tutoring, right? But they also get like ballet, go and learn ballet, learn how to play piano. And it's all just to prove to the other people. Basically, they just put their kids out there in the view of their extended family during Chinese New Year's to just prove out there whose kids is better. But what is this actually doing? It's just putting mental pressure on the kids, right? Not just the financial problem is something that they are putting on themselves, but on the kids itself, it's putting a lot of mental pressure and burden. If you're seeing your family struggling financially and they are supporting you in education, and if you do if your scores drop, imagine the kind of pressure you will feel, the disgust you will feel. So it's really unhealthy level of whatever word you want to give it, right? And he also gives example of South Korea, where 70% of all students enrolled were actually having after school tutoring, right? And yeah, which only led to high suicide rates and low birth rates again. And yeah, and this dynamic of, like, you know, having education system highly priced has led to a tremendous pricing power among the after school education companies. And you know, I think Xi Jinping, he actually wrote a book, and he also stated this in his book, like, it's becoming a vicious cycle of just extracting money out of the students just because the parents are willing to do so. Like, you know, they are willing to sacrifice their life in order to just give education to their kid, and in the hope that they become someone big. Yeah, and in the eyes of CCP, right, the majority of Chinese families are subsidizing and suffering immense pressure. The government sees this as a form of rent seeking without adding value to the society, and it's a zero-sum game. And yeah, and all this immense financial pressure, that China's population is declining, all those things. And then also, other than the education, you have the housing issue as well. China's housing is rising astronomically over the decades. So everybody knows, even though there's a lot of empty houses in China, the prices of housing in Chinese, especially in the main cities, right, is freaking high. And he also says that it's pretty much tied down to education itself, because if you want to get the best education, you will try to live as a family near the place where the schools are, right? And that also drives out the prices of the housing. Whereas the other factor he mentioned is you know, home ownership is actually a cultural prerequisite for marriage in China. and this I have heard long time ago. So basically, if a guy wants to get married to a girl, right, and looking at the ratio of girls as compared to men, right, it's lower in China. So in order to for a guy to get married to a girl, he has to have a house. Like, it goes without saying, if you don't have a house, you can't even ask a girl to marry you. And in order for their son to get married, right, actually the entire family and the extended family itself actually pitches in money for the son to go and buy a house and to get married, which is, again, like, if there's more capital in chasing a set, right, then the prices are gonna go high. And all these cultural things are actually putting a pressure on all this things, and high child raising costs, high property costs, long-term working hours. This is another thing. 996, right? Again, it goes without saying, like, all the fresh graduates, you have to do 996, and companies openly ask for it. What is this 996? You have to actually work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. It's crazy. And there have been a lot of suicidal cases just because of that as well, dying of exhaustion and shit, which is pretty bad, right? So it's not good for the population itself. And again, China's goal is to improve the lives of the people. It's not to make the rich richer, right? And I think every good government's goal should be this. All right. So yeah, and all this pressure on the students, what's this causing is for them to give up, and they actually came up with this phrase, lay flat, and it represents, like, they are just giving up on the rat race. Many Chinese young are choosing to leave the rat race, forego marriage, child, have lower ambitions, move out of expensive tier 1 cities back to their hometown and countryside, and prioritize their own time and freedom over material possession. And obviously this is not something CCP likes. If everybody gives up and just sits on their butt and does nothing, then the country is not going to progress, right? There are not going to be any advancements and nothing. So this is the reason why. So according to him, it affects productivity and future trajectory of the society as a whole. Especially in China, the government has global leadership ambitions. That is quite obvious. And in fact, the trend is so concerning that the phrase "lie flat" itself is censored by Chinese internet regulators. So yeah, this is the entire few points, like why all the regulations are coming in. And I would say it again, like, all the regulations are nothing new, right? In the developed world, we have all seen the regulations that China is coming in with right now. I think everybody was complaining about China being there is not enough regulations and stuff when they didn't have, and when they try to put in, then they try to complain that China is regulating because they want to maintain their power and stuff. I think that's not the case. All they're thinking of is the betterment of their people, right? And that, I think, is how they will maintain their powers as well. If people are not happy, that will cause for a revolution in the country. If people are happy, they are seeing progress, then they won't question the government that much. And yeah, so I think the only thing that China is doing differently is they are implementing things very fast. And yet again, I've shared this before as well. This is exactly what I expect out of Chinese government. Like, they brought the country from a backward nation to a developed, not a developed, but a world power in just 20 years. And it is a record, right? They raised 800 million people out of poverty in this time frame. Never done before. And why they were able to do all this is because they are able to take actions. They are able to implement things very fast. So if they're doing that very thing, and that is the reason I invested into them, then why should I be worried about it? So yeah, but one thing to take note is, like, if you're investing into China, you have to basically understand where the Chinese government is going. And that is the very reason, if you see my company analysis video, I always mention, like, how this area is actually supported by the government. If I'm talking about Baidu, all the AI advanced manufacturing is supported by by CCP. If I'm talking about JD.com, then I always mention that CCP is moving towards a a domestic consumption economy from the export economy, which is going to benefit JD.com. So everything is tied to where the CCP is trying to move, and if they say they're moving towards that direction, they're going to do it and they're going to meet their targets. So yeah, and it's always good if you want to invest into China to follow the government and see where they're going. The best way to do it is to explore the 5-year plans that they come up with. The latest one is from 2021 to 2025, and I think the author actually mentions that as well. Let me pull it out somewhere here. Yeah, so 2021 to 2025, and the aim is to become, for this plan, right, is to become a moderately developed country by 2023, which is like 30,000 USD per capita. And 30,000 USD per capita, I think now they are at 18,000 USD per capita. I think PPP is 18,000, and as he mentioned, 10,000 on actual basis. So yeah, $30,000. If the entire country, the population itself, the middle class is growing, right, there's gonna be more consumption. And as they mentioned over here, focus on domestic consumption. If the domestic consumption is growing, then obviously the companies are gonna grow themselves as well. I think it's very it's so easy to understand. However, it's only for people who are thinking long term. If you're trading, if you're investing for a short term, then obviously this doesn't make sense to you, right? And yeah, so that's about it. I want to make another video. Then the following one would be on what exactly I'm doing during this time when everything is low. So what is my moves that I'm making? I will just do this video right after this and keep you guys updated on that. So if you're interested, just go and subscribe. Until the next episode, ciao.